Picture this. It's March 6, 1943, in the dusty, war-torn headquarters of the U.S. Second Corps somewhere in North Africa. The air is thick with defeat. Officers shuffling papers quietly, avoiding eye contact, still reeling from the worst beating American ground forces have ever taken. Suddenly, the door swings open, and in stride a larger-than-life figure. Major General George S. Patton, Jr., polished steel helmet gleaming, those famous ivory-handled revolvers at his hips, and a stare that could freeze you in your tracks. Within the first half hour, he spots an officer behind a desk. No helmet, tied loose and like it's just another day at the office. Patton doesn't raise his voice. He just points and says, "You pack your bags." You're relieved. Just like that, a career spanning decades ends in seconds. By the end of that first day, several more are gone. Over the next week, the number climbs into the dozens. And in just 10 brutal days, Patton completely remakes an entire corps that was on the verge of collapse. This isn't some Hollywood exaggeration. This is the real story of how one of the most controversial generals in American history took a shattered, humiliated army, fresh off losing thousands of men and hundreds of tanks in a matter of days, and turned it into a force that would go on attack and actually win battles against the legendary German Afrika Korps. All because he was willing to fire his own officers without hesitation, holding them accountable in a way no one else dared. Stay with me here, because this isn't just about one fiery general cleaning house. It's about the raw human cost of leadership in war, the careers destroyed, the egos crushed, the lives saved down the line, and how sometimes the toughest, most unforgiving decisions are the ones that pull an army back from the brink. It all starts with disaster. February 1943, Tunisia. The Americans have only been fighting in North Africa for a few months since Operation Torch landed them there late the year before. Most of these soldiers, farm boys from the Midwest, factory workers from cities, have never heard a shot fired in anger. Their officers, many are products of a peacetime army, promoted fast because of the sudden expansion, but with zero experience leading men under real fire. Across the desert, waiting for them, are Rommel's battle-hardened veterans, guys who've been fighting non-stop since 1941, masters of maneuver warfare in the open sands. On February 14th, the Germans launched their offensive, hitting American positions hard around places like Gafsa. What follows is chaos. Units get overrun before they even know what's happening. Soldiers, told back home they were the greatest fighting force on earth, suddenly find themselves throwing down rifles to run faster. Whole battalions disintegrate. Then comes a hammer blow. February 19th, Rommel drives his panzers straight through Kasserine Pass, a narrow gap in the mountains that the Americans are supposed to hold. The defense crumbles almost immediately. The commander of Second Corps, Major General Lloyd Fredendall, is directing things from a bunker 70 miles behind the lines, too far to see or feel what's actually going on. He issues confusing orders, blames his subordinates when things go wrong, and basically loses control of the battlefield. By the time the Germans finally pull back on February 24th, more because they ran low on fuel than American resistance, the damage is catastrophic. Over 6,000 American casualties in just days. Nearly 200 tanks destroyed or abandoned. Entire regiments captured, with propaganda photos of American prisoners splashed across newspapers worldwide. British allies are whispering that maybe the Yanks aren't ready for this war. And the Germans? Their commanders report back that the Americans fight hard when cornered but collapse easily under pressure, poorly coordinated, poorly led. Back at Allied headquarters, Dwight Eisenhower is furious and worried. The whole Tunisia campaign could unravel if American forces don't shape up fast. He needs someone who can kick this corps into fighting shape. Someone ruthless, demanding, and unafraid to break eggs to make an omelet. That someone is George Patton. At 57 years old, Patton is already a legend in armored circles. He fought tanks in World War I, wrote the book on how to use them between the wars, and he's famous for training troops harder than anyone else. He believes American soldiers are the best raw material in the world, but only if they're led right. Discipline, aggression, constant readiness. That's his mantra. No excuses. He knows from experience that sloppiness kills, and he's never hesitated to relieve officers who don't measure up. Eisenhower calls him in, relieves Frendahl quietly, and puts Patton in charge with simple orders. Fix Second Corps. Make them fight. And do it quick, because the war won't wait. Patton wastes no time. His very first general order. Every single soldier, from private to general, wears a helmet and full combat gear at all times. No exceptions, no matter where you are. Necktie tucked in, leggings buttoned, weapons clean. The helmet thing becomes his signature. That first officer he fires, just for not having his helmet on at headquarters. Patton doesn't yell, he just makes it clear. If you're not dressed for battle, you're not ready to lead men into one. Next order. Strict military courtesy. Everyone salutes. Everyone. It seems petty, but Patton knows it's about instilling pride and snap, reminding every man he's part of a professional fighting machine, not a defeated rabble. That first night, he gathers the senior commanders and lays it down straight. The soldiers didn't fail at Kasserine. The leadership did. We're going to change that starting now. The real purge begins the next day, March 7th. Patton hops in his Jeep and starts touring the front lines personally. No warnings, no appointments. He shows up unannounced at battalion headquarters, regiment commands, even company positions dug into the Rocky Hills. At one stop, the battalion commander isn't even there. He's back at Division HQ. His second-in-command can't rattle off the exact positions of all his companies. Patton relieves the absent commander on the spot, promotes the exec to take his place, and tells him, "You better know everything, Cole, by tomorrow or you're next." At another unit, a company commander has set up his post hundreds of yards behind his forward platoons. He explains it's for better radio communication. Patton cuts him off. A leader belongs where his men are facing the enemy. If you can't see what they see, feel what they feel, how the hell are you supposed to lead them? Gone. Day after day, this goes on. Patton crisscrosses the core area, asking sharp questions. Where are your minefields? What's your artillery support plan? How fast can you move if counterattacked? If the answers aren't immediate and confident, or the defenses look sloppy, or the officer just doesn't have that fire in his eyes, relieved. Sometimes right there in the dirt, with a man's subordinates watching. Word spreads like wildfire. The sound of Patton's Jeep approaching becomes the most terrifying thing on the front. Officers start sleeping in their foxholes up front. Maps get studied obsessively. No one wants to be the next one packing their duffel bag in disgrace. It's not just fear, though. Patton is fear in his brutality. He spots the good ones, too. The majors and lieutenant colonels who held their ground at Kasserine, who kept their men fighting even as everything collapsed around them. Those guys get promoted fast, moved up to battalion or regiment command. Aggressive fighters get rewarded. Cowards or the complacent get shipped out. One key figure he brings in is Omar Bradley. Eisenhower's eyes and ears during the battle, a calm, methodical officer who gave honest reports on what went wrong. Patton makes Bradley his deputy, handling the staff work so Patton can focus on the sharp end. It's the start of a partnership that will carry through Sicily, Normandy, and beyond. Patton doesn't stop at firings. He drills the Corps relentlessly. New tank tactics, emphasizing speed and flanking instead of sitting hull down waiting to get hit. Better coordination between infantry, armor, and artillery. Because at Kasserine, everything fought separately and got picked apart. Daily exercises, live fire where possible, and constant emphasis on aggression. Attack first, attack hard, never give the enemy a breather. All this in stolen hours between inspections. And looming over everything is a deadline. Eisenhower wants an American offensive soon, to prove the Corps is back in the fight. Patton picks a target, Guettar and Guettar, and gets approval for March 17th. That gives him just 11 days from taking command to launch a major attack. As the days count down, the transformation is unbelievable. Headquarters that look like a civilian office now buzz with combat-ready officers. Units that were pulling back at shadows now patrol aggressively. Soldiers notice the change at the top. Leaders are out front, taking the same risks, held to the same standards. Morale shifts from shame to something sharper. Determination. German intelligence picks it up too. Reports coming about increased American activity, better coordination. They sense something has changed. Then March 17th dawns. American guns open up at 5:30 a.m., pounding Axis positions. Infantry and tanks push forward. The Big Red One, the 1st Infantry Division, humiliated at Kasserine, leads a charge and takes Guettar ahead of schedule, advancing miles into enemy territory. A week later, the Germans hit back hard with a panzer counterattack. But this time, the Americans are ready. Artillery smashes the lead tanks. Anti-tank guns engage at close range. Infantry hold the line instead of breaking. Over 30 German tanks wrecked. The attack shatters against prepared defenses. It's a win, not huge strategically, but massive psychologically. The same troops that ran at Kasserine now beat back Rommel's best. The Corps proves it can fight and win. In those 10 days, Patton relieves dozens of officers, staff types who were comfortable in the rear, battalion commanders who led from too far back, some who just froze when it mattered. Careers ended quietly, men sent home with vague letters about reassignment. Some deserved it completely, inept or timid. Others were decent men, overwhelmed by circumstances. But Patton doesn't make exceptions. The standard is absolute. The human toll is heavy. Good officers watching friends pack in the night, wondering if they'll be next. Families back home getting letters that don't explain. But the payoff? The Corps that finishes Tunisia is tough, professional, aggressive. Many of the young officers Patton promotes go on to lead divisions in Sicily, Italy, Normandy. Patton himself only stays 40 days before moving on to plan the Sicily invasion. Bradley takes over and keeps the standards high. And the American Army learns a lesson it carries through the war. Accountability at the top, no tolerance for failure in command. It's controversial even today. Was it too harsh? Did it destroy good men unnecessarily? Maybe, but it worked. The army that was routed in February is victorious by April. And down the line, those standards saved countless lives by ensuring competent leadership. Patton once said leaders have to be willing to do anything they ask of their men, and sometimes that means making the calls no one else will. In those 10 days in the desert, he did exactly that, and pulled an army back from the edge. The transformation didn't stop with the officers. Patton knew that to fight like winners, his men had to feel like winners again. After Kasserine, shame hung over the Corps like desert dust. Soldiers who believed the propaganda back home about being unbeatable, now wondering if they were just cannon fodder. Patton attacked that too. He drove around constantly in his open Jeep, stopping to talk to GIs in their positions. No speeches from a stage, just straight talk. "You boys got ambushed by better-led troops," he'd say. "That wasn't your fault. But from now on, we're going to outlead them, outfight them, and kick their asses all the way back to Tripoli." He brought in new training that was brutal but practical. Tank crews practiced maneuvering at full speed across broken ground instead of sitting static. Infantry learned to advance under live artillery fire. Scary as hell, but it built confidence that their own guns would protect them. Anti-tank gunners drilled until they could hit moving targets fast. Everyone learned the same lesson. Speed and aggression beat caution every time against the Germans. Patton also fixed the little things that kill morale. Hot food delivered forward, mail sorted and delivered daily. Clean uniforms when possible. He made sure soldiers saw their general sharing the same risks, driving up front, ignoring sniper fire, always with those pistols gleaming like a movie star. It worked. Guys started joking that if old blood and guts was that crazy, maybe they could be too. By mid-March, the change was visible. Units that flinched at shadows now sent out fighting patrols. Tank commanders pushed forward instead of waiting to be hit. And when Patton ordered the attack on Gafsa, the men moved out eager instead of afraid. The battle at Guettar proved everything. When the German 10th Panzer Division counterattacked with dozens of tanks, American gunners and tank destroyers stood their ground. For the first time in North Africa, U.S. forces destroyed more enemy tanks than they lost. The Germans pulled back, stunned that the same Americans who'd run weeks earlier now fought like veterans. Word spread fast through the Allied lines. British officers who'd quietly doubted the Yanks started showing respect. Eisenhower got reports that Second Corps was a different animal. And the soldiers themselves, they walked taller. One private wrote home, "We finally got a real fighter leading us." Patton knew his time was short. He was already planning the invasion of Sicily. But in those few weeks, he rebuilt not just an army, but its belief in itself. Looking back, those 10 days in March 1943 were a turning point, not just for Second Corps, but for the entire U.S. Army in World War II. The ruthless house cleaning, the relentless training, the refusal to accept anything less than total commitment. It set a standard that carried forward. Many of the young officers Patton promoted went on to command divisions and corps in Europe. The tactics drilled in the Tunisian desert, aggressive maneuver, combined arms, leading from the front, became American doctrine, and the psychological shift was permanent. After Guettar, no one could say American troops couldn't fight, but there was a human cost. Dozens of officers went home in quiet disgrace. Some deserved it, men who'd failed their soldiers badly. Others were simply overwhelmed by their first taste of combat in a badly led corps. Careers ended, reputations damaged, families left wondering what really happened. War doesn't allow for gentle transitions. Patton himself never apologized. He believed that in combat, hesitation at the top cost lives at the bottom. Better to be harsh in training and preparation than merciful when it was too late. And history proved him right. The army that landed in Sicily months later was confident, aggressive, ready to take on the best the Germans had. Patton only commanded Second Corps for about 40 days total before handing it to Omar Bradley and moving on. But in that short time, he did what no one else could. Turn defeat into determination, shame into pride. He once wrote that a leader's job is to make his men do what they don't want to do in order to achieve what they've always wanted to achieve, victory. In the spring of 1943, under the burning North African sun, George Patton lived that belief completely. And because he did, because he was willing to be the hardest, most unforgiving son of a bitch in the theater, thousands of American soldiers who might have died in later battles instead came home alive. That's the real legacy of those 10 brutal days. Not just a corps saved, but an army forged into something that could win the biggest war in history. Thanks for coming along on this one. It's a story that reminds us leadership in crisis isn't about being liked. It's about doing whatever it takes to bring your people through.